There are certain mysteries and ideas that the Church definitely doesn't want you to know about. From the origins of Yahweh to the mysterious healing powers of Christ, things might not be exactly as the Church would have you believe. Today, I'll introduce you to some concepts you've likely never considered before, like if God created everything, did He also create alien life? As well as the truth behind the roles women played in the early church and the creation of heaven and hell. Stick around because you won't want to miss this. The origins of Yahweh. Yahweh, a name that's synonymous with the God of Israel, has a fascinating origin story. Many people believe that the name Yahweh wasn't mentioned before Moses, but they are wrong. So, who was he before Moses? Yahweh's story begins in the ancient land of Canaan, where the Semitic language used the term El to mean God, as well as a title for a major deity. You can think of El as the leader of the gods, and Yahweh as one of his employees assigned to look after the land of Israel. Okay, but who was Yahweh really? Essentially, at least in the beginning, he was just one of many gods who were under El's rule. According to the Book of Exodus, Moses encountered God at the burning bush and was the first to hear God reveal his name. This came after Moses was tasked with leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses was understandably nervous about this mission and asked what name he should give the Israelites for the God who had sent him. The name given was Yahweh, which was written as a series of consonants without vowels in ancient texts. The name Yahweh is closely linked to the Hebrew word Hayah. No, not the karate term. It means to be or to exist, and after revealing his name, God followed up with the phrase, "I am who I am." This response not only provided Moses with a name to use, but also emphasizes God's eternal, self-sufficient nature. It highlighted that God exists beyond human limitations and does not depend on anything else for his existence. So Yahweh's name originated with Moses? Actually, no. The name Yahweh was around before Moses, who is thought to have lived around the 13th century BC. This is because Yahweh appears in the book of Genesis and was called upon as early as the time of Enoch, aka Adam's grandson, long before the era of Moses. Now, determining the exact origins of Yahweh worship is tricky. Some suggest that it began in Canaan, but another interesting idea is that it may have started in northern Arabia. An Egyptian inscription from the time of Pharaoh Amenhotep III mentions a nomadic tribe called the Shasu and a place named Yehovah. Dutch historian Cornelis Thiele proposed that Yahweh worship was adopted by the Israelites from the Arabian Peninsula. This idea, known as the Kenite hypothesis, suggests that the early Israelites encountered Yahweh through their interactions with nomadic tribes. But how did Yahweh become the God of Israel? In the ancient Canaanite religion, Yahweh was one of many gods under El, including Asherah, El's consort, and Baal. Each god had their region. Baal was in Canaan, while Yahweh took over Israel. Over time, though, Yahweh evolved from a storm god with a warrior persona to the supreme deity of Israel. But how exactly this happened is up for debate. Yahweh's role changed over time. During the Late Iron Age, as nation-states emerged, Yahweh's importance grew. However, there were challenges, like when King Ahab of Israel married Jezebel and tried to replace Yahweh with Baal. Despite these setbacks, Yahweh's worship bounced back. His priests destroyed idols of other gods, and Yahweh's qualities absorbed those of Baal and Asherah. Then eventually he was honored with the title El Shaddai, which means God Almighty, the healing hands of Christ. Jesus is famous for his miracles, but perhaps the most striking of these are the healings he performed. According to the Bible, Jesus cured a variety of ailments, including paralysis, blindness, and leprosy. He often used the laying on of hands, a technique where he touched or held someone to heal them. For example, in Luke chapter 4, verse 40, people brought their sick to Jesus, and he healed them all by touching them. But how exactly did Jesus perform these miracles? Jesus' healing miracles were done with a touch, and he even empowered his disciples to heal others. In Luke chapter 1, verse 1-2, Jesus gave his 12 disciples the power to drive out demons and cure diseases. This ability to pass on healing power resembles Reiki, a modern practice where healing energy is transferred through touch or intention. Did faith play a role in Jesus' healings? Interestingly, while many of Jesus' miracles required faith, some did not. In Mark chapter 6 verses 5 to 6, it's noted that even though the people lacked faith, Jesus was still able to heal a few sick people by laying his hands on them. This is similar to Reiki, where the healer's energy works regardless of the recipient's belief. This makes you wonder, was Jesus trained in healing techniques? The Bible doesn't detail Jesus' life between the ages of 12 and 30, which has led to speculation. Some researchers suggest that Jesus might have traveled to the East and learned mystical teachings from India, Tibet, or China. This would imply that he could have been introduced to healing practices similar to Reiki. Some believe that Jesus' healing methods might have even influenced later practices. Early Christian traditions and Gnostic groups who were known for their healing practices and secret teachings might have preserved these methods. The Gnostics, mentioned in texts from the Nag Hammadi library, which was discovered in 1959, practiced laying on of hands healing techniques. They claim to have secret knowledge that was passed down to them by Jesus. So why did the focus shift from healing to faith? As Christianity became more organized, the focus shifted from healing and personal experience to faith and official teachings. This change led to the suppression of Gnostic practices and the laying on of hands by ordinary Christians. In a nutshell, Jesus' healings through touch share similarities with modern Reiki practices. While there is speculation that Jesus might have learned healing techniques from Eastern traditions, it's also possible that he possessed these abilities from birth. But what do you believe? Let me know in the comments down below. The Pope who drank cocaine wine. When it comes to the colorful history of the popes, it's easy to get lost in a sea of eccentricities and bizarre stories. For instance, there's Pope Stephen VI, who put a dead pope on trial, or Pope John XII, who had a notorious reputation for gambling and other scandals. But among these stories, Pope Leo XIII stands out not just for his significant contributions to the Church, but also for his unusual choice of beverage. So, who was Pope Leo XIII? Pope Leo XIII was one of the longest-serving popes, leading the Catholic Church from 1878 until his death in 1903. He was known for being a thoughtful and progressive leader, advocating for workers' rights, safe working conditions, and the importance of labor unions. Leo XIII was also a pioneer in embracing modern technology. In fact, he was the first pope to be recorded on audio and filmed by an early movie camera. But what really stood out about Leo XIII was his ability to stay productive. Leo XIII was incredibly prolific, writing more papal encyclicals than any other pope, 88 in total. Encyclicals are important letters from the Pope, addressing crucial topics, and Leo XIII tackled everything from liberty and marriage to immigration and the rosary. His extraordinary output, especially considering his old age, has amazed scholars. So how did he do it? What was his secret? Well, it was probably the cocaine. Yep, you heard me. Pope Leo XIII was known for drinking cocaine-spiked wine. This wasn't a homemade concoction, but a commercial product called Van Mariani. This tonic, which combined wine with cocaine, was popular among many prominent figures of the time. Figures who drank this stuff included Thomas Edison and Queen Victoria. It was believed to provide energy and vitality, and boy, did it ever. How did Leo XIII use this cocaine wine? Leo XIII loved Van Mariani and even carried it with him in a personal flask, claiming that it was a necessary fortification when prayer alone wasn't enough. And he didn't just drink it privately. He openly endorsed it. He was so impressed with the beverage that he awarded the wine's creator, Angelo Mariani, a Vatican gold medal. That's right, the Pope promoted cocaine wine. Angelo Mariani used the Pope's endorsement in his advertisements. Posters featured a smiling Pope Leo XIII proudly endorsing the tonic wine and acknowledging its beneficial effects. This endorsement was printed alongside a message about the gold medal Leo XIII had awarded. So while Pope Leo XIII was a forward-thinking and influential leader, he was also famously known for his fondness for wine, mixed with nose candy. And now for number 7, but first it's shout-out time. I wanted to give a big thank you to Nicola Jansen and M. Vaccaro for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The Darkening Age. In the book The Darkening Age, The Christian Destruction of the Classical World, Catherine Nixey presents a provocative view of the early Christian impact on the classical world. It challenges the popular notion that Christianity was a good-natured force that improved society. Actually, it suggested the complete opposite. So, what does Nixey argue about early Christianity? Nixey's book explores how early Christians, rather than preserving classical culture, engaged in violent and destructive actions against it. This view contrasts with the more traditional narrative that Christianity was a force for good, gradually improving and saving the remnants of classical civilization. Nixey's perspective is a departure from the Christian victory-focused view that has dominated historical accounts. She argues that early Christians were not just enthusiastic reformers, but also engaged in ruthless campaigns of destruction. This included tearing down temples, destroying artwork, and persecuting those who clung to pre-Christian traditions. One vivid example of the destruction of classical culture in the book is the defacement of statues, such as the statue of Athena in Palmyra. Christian zealots gouged eyes and carved crosses into certain statues' foreheads. Nixey uses this as a metaphor for the broader cultural destruction brought about by early Christians. They viewed classical practices and artifacts as symbols of paganism that needed to be eradicated. How did early Christians justify their actions? According to Nixey, many early Christians believed that the world was filled with malevolent supernatural beings. Destroying statues or burning books were seen as purifying actions, much like removing a gangrenous limb. This belief in a metaphysical battle against demons justified their violent actions against classical culture. Who were some of the notable victims of this religious violence? Hypatia, a renowned philosopher and mathematician in Alexandria, was murdered by a Christian mob in the early 5th century. Another example is Shenout, a Coptic abbot who led violent campaigns against those with differing theological views, smashing their property. Nixey also highlights the role of inflammatory rhetoric from early Christian leaders. Their sermons painted opponents as demonic and corrupt, which fueled the violence and cultural destruction. This rhetoric laid the groundwork for a millennium of religiously motivated oppression. Traditional views often depict early Christians as saviors of classical knowledge. In contrast, Nixey portrays them as aggressors who sought to obliterate much of what they inherited from the Roman world. Her book sheds light on the loss of cultural and intellectual heritage due to their actions. Nixey's book aims to correct the overly positive portrayal of early Christianity by exposing its violent and destructive tendencies. Her book is a critique of the myth that the Christianization of Rome was a purely beneficial transformation. The Darkening Age challenges the conventional view of early Christianity, presenting it as a force of destruction rather than preservation. Nixey's detailed examination of religious violence and cultural eradication provides a fresh and critical perspective on the impact of early Christians on the classical world. This is a perspective that current church leaders likely want everyone to ignore. God created aliens. The question of whether God created alien life is intriguing, to say the least, and it turns out that Christians haven't traditionally explored this topic much. So, what do we know about this possibility? Listen to this and let me know what you think about everything in the comments. Well, I'll answer that question with another question. Did early Christians consider the idea of aliens? Historically, no. Early church fathers and Protestant reformers didn't really speculate about extraterrestrial life. The concept of life beyond Earth only began to gain traction with the development of the heliocentric model in the 17th century. This new model replaced the Earth-centered view of the universe. Prior to this, the idea of alien life wasn't on anyone's radar. So how did the concept of aliens gain popularity? The 1950s saw a huge surge in interest in extraterrestrial life, thanks in part to the space race. After the Soviet Union launched Sputnik in 1957 and NASA landed astronauts on the moon in 1969, space exploration and the possibility of alien life became major topics of fascination. This era also marked the explosion of sci-fi movies and TV shows that imagined life on other planets. Today, the search for extraterrestrial life is a major focus of space missions. NASA and other space agencies are actively looking for signs of life beyond Earth, and there are even plans to establish a permanent base on Mars. But what does the Bible have to say about alien life? According to the Bible, specifically Genesis chapter 2, there's no mention of life on other planets. The focus is on Earth and its inhabitants, with God creating everything here for the benefit of humans. This implies that Earth might be unique in the universe, specially designed for us. Emphasis on might, since it doesn't say there isn't any life on other planets either. If extraterrestrial life did exist, though, a big question would be whether they have souls or are made in the image of God like humans. The Bible teaches that Jesus' sacrifice was meant to redeem humanity, not extraterrestrial beings. This suggests that if aliens existed and were sinful, they wouldn't have a path to redemption through Christ, as he is the representative for humanity alone. But who's to say that extraterrestrials don't look exactly like us and also call themselves humans? The media has been hard at work for years, creating an image of aliens that is so far from ourselves that it's hard to imagine. But what about non-intelligent life on other planets? Even if we consider non-intelligent life forms like plants or microorganisms, the Bible suggests that Earth and its creation were designed specifically for humans. There's no clear indication that God created other planets with life forms for us to interact with, or is there? The main issue with blending biblical perspectives with ideas of extraterrestrial life is that it can lead to theological problems. For example, the idea of Jesus repeatedly dying on different worlds for different alien races is not supported by the Bible. The Good Book states that Christ's sacrifice was a one-time event for humanity. So why is it that in Moses chapter 1:33, God says, "And worlds without number have I created"? I mean, doesn't that mean that Earth isn't the only planet shaped by God? Or does this scripture give more evidence for the multiverse theory? What do you think? The past lives of Jesus. The concept that Jesus Christ might have had previous lives on Earth is likely something you've never considered. But Edgar Cayce, an American psychic, known for his trance readings, was convinced that this was the case. Cayce, who worked as a Sunday school teacher, discovered his remarkable ability to access deep knowledge and spiritual insights while in a trance-like state. Despite having only a 7th grade education, Cayce's trance-induced readings covered a broad range of subjects, from medical advice to complex metaphysical topics. And of course, one of these topics was the idea of past lives. According to Cayce, Jesus experienced several previous incarnations before assuming his role as the Christ. Among these past lives, Cayce identified Adam as the first notable figure. In the biblical narrative, Adam is the first man created by God, living in the Garden of Eden with Eve before their banishment due to disobedience. This story of beginnings and a fall is a fundamental part of biblical tradition. Another notable past life Cayce mentioned was Enoch, a figure from the Book of Enoch who's mentioned briefly in Genesis. This text describes Enoch's mystical experiences and his transformation into the angel Metatron. Enoch's role is notable for his celestial journeys and spiritual evolution, adding a layer of mysticism to the concept of reincarnation. Melchizedek was another past life attributed to Jesus by Cayce. Melchizedek was a priest-prophet who appeared during the time of Abraham and is mentioned in several ancient texts. Melchizedek is named in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Codex. Cayce also pointed to Joseph, the son of Jacob, who rose to prominence in Egypt. Joseph's story, marked by themes of betrayal and redemption, bears notable parallels to Jesus' life. His rise from adversity to a position of power is seen as a precursor to Jesus' own journey. Joshua, who led the Israelites into the Promised Land, was another past life identified by Cayce. Joshua's role as a leader and scribe during the Israelites' transition from the desert to their new home resonates with the leadership role Jesus played in his own time. His involvement in compiling and translating parts of the Bible further links him to Jesus' spiritual mission. Asaph, a music director and seer who served under King David and Solomon, is also a past life of Jesus mentioned by Case. Although less familiar, Asaph's role in providing spiritual guidance through music highlights a different aspect of religious leadership. Additionally, Case identified Jeshua, a high priest who played a crucial role in the Israelites' return from exile and the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Jeshua's involvement in organizing the Israelites' spiritual and physical restoration reflects a continuity of higher purpose. And finally, Zend, the father of Zoroaster and founder of Zoroastrianism, was also listed by Case. This adds an interesting twist to the idea of Jesus having past lives, showing how different cultures can influence each other spiritually. The concept of reincarnation, though embraced by religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, is not universally accepted, particularly within Christianity. Case's insights offer a unique perspective on Jesus' spiritual evolution, suggesting that his journey through various lives prepared him for his ultimate role as the Christ. While reincarnation remains a matter of personal belief rather than scientific proof, Case's readings provide a thought-provoking exploration of this concept. If you believe Case altogether, Jesus lived 9 lives, as Adam, Enoch, Melchizedek, Joseph, Joshua, Asaph, Jeshua, Zend, and lastly, the Messiah. Could this be where the idea of cats having 9 lives comes from? Maybe, but why cats? Female church leaders. The neglected history of women in the early church reveals a captivating and often overlooked aspect of Christian origins. Women were crucial in the early church, from the cross to the empty tomb and beyond. So why don't we hear more about them? Catherine Kroger's research uncovers their important contributions, offering a more complete picture of early Christianity. So, what roles did women play in the early church? For starters, they were the last disciples at the cross and the first at the empty tomb. This shows their unwavering dedication from the beginning of Jesus' ministry to his resurrection. Historical records from both Christian and secular sources highlight the remarkable presence of women in the early Christian community. For example, in the 2nd century, Celsus, who didn't like Christianity, made fun of the church for attracting mostly silly, mean, and stupid people, along with women and kids. Bishop Cyprian of Carthage, around the same time, mentioned in his Testimonia that there were a lot of Christian girls but not enough Christian guys to marry them. This shows that back then, the church had a lot more women than men. Why were there so many women in the early church? One reason was the Christian rejection of the common practice of exposing unwanted female infants, or in other words, abandoning them, leaving them to die. So, of course, this led to a higher number of Christian women. Additionally, many high-status women converted to Christianity, while their male relatives remained pagans to protect their social status. This influx of women helped shape the church's early growth. These women were not just followers, but also leaders and scholars. For instance, high-born Christian women studied the Bible and ancient languages, showing impressive scholarship. Jerome, a key early Christian scholar, even referred church elders to Marcella, an intelligent Roman woman, for resolving theological questions. And by the early 400s AD, Augustine remarked that some Christian women were better educated in spiritual matters than many philosophers. Women also excelled in social service. The female Saint Fabiola founded the first Christian hospital in Europe, and many others devoted their wealth to helping the poor, despite opposition from their families. Tertullian, an early Christian writer, noted the extensive ministries of women, including visiting the sick, attending church gatherings, and even caring for martyrs. But were there any women in leadership roles? You bet. In the early church, women led house churches and played important roles in spreading Christianity. Names like Priscilla, Chloe, Lydia, and Apphia stand out as early church leaders. Clement of Alexandria mentioned that women accompanied apostles on missionary journeys, helping to teach and reach out to other women. Junior is another notable figure. Mentioned by Paul in Romans 16, Junior is said to be of note among the apostles. Junior's role as an apostle was recognized and celebrated by early church leaders like John Chrysostom of Constantinople. Paul also acknowledged a woman named Phoebe as a deacon of the church in Cenchreae, suggesting that she held a significant role in church leadership. Women were also involved in the ministry of deaconesses, a role that included visiting women in pagan households and assisting in baptisms. Deaconesses were ordained and played a crucial part in church life, including pastoral care and administrative tasks. So now you know, women's roles in the early church were diverse and influential, from leadership and scholarship to social service and pastoral care. Their contributions, though sometimes overlooked, were integral to the growth and development of Christianity. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The Bible is plagiarized. Plagiarism is more than just borrowing ideas without giving credit. It's considered a serious form of fraud and deception. This is especially important when the work in question holds significant sway over billions of people's lives, such as religious texts like the Bible. When something is presented as original but is actually based on earlier sources, it can have major implications. This is especially the case when it influences societies, governments, and even causes conflicts. So, how serious is plagiarism in Christianity? Considering that Christianity has over 2 billion followers, it's very crucial. The Bible, believed to have been written over 2,000 years ago, is seen by its followers as divinely inspired. However, some argue that parts of the Bible may have been influenced by older texts and myths from ancient cultures. For instance, the Old Testament, which is part of the Hebrew Bible, dates back to around 1200 BC, and the New Testament was written in the 1st century AD. But why didn't these events get recorded sooner? If God created the world in 6 days, as young Earth creationism suggests, why wait thousands of years before writing it down? And if God was so involved, why not have Adam and Eve write it down from the start? Some even question whether Jesus, a central figure in Christianity, was actually one historical person or a composite of several preachers' stories. The name Jesus Christ wasn't used until after his death, with Christ meaning Messiah in Hebrew. Why did Jesus, if he was the Son of God, go through a normal human life instead of appearing as a fully grown man? This raises more questions about the narrative's consistency. And what's even more odd is that all biblical events seem to be focused around Canaan. Why? With so many ancient civilizations existing around the same time, like Egypt, why aren't there records matching the Bible's accounts? If the Great Flood described in the Bible really happened, wouldn't there be some evidence of it in Egypt? I mean, Egypt was close by and was known for its historical records. Interestingly, the Bible shares similarities with earlier myths. For example, Dionysus, a Greek god, had a life story with many similarities to Jesus, including miraculous deeds and resurrection. The 25th of December, a date Christians celebrate as Jesus' birthday, was also associated with the Roman god Sol Invictus and the Persian god Mithras. Mithras, known for his own miracles and virgin birth, was worshipped centuries before Jesus' supposed birth date. Even the story of Eve from the Bible shares striking similarities with Pandora from Greek mythology. Both women's curiosity leads to major consequences, reflecting a shared theme across cultures about the origins of human suffering. The overlaps between biblical stories and older myths raise questions about the originality of religious texts. While direct plagiarism may not be proven, the similarities suggest a cultural exchange of themes and ideas. This reflects how myths and legends can evolve and influence each other over time, something the Church likely doesn't want you to know. The truth about heaven and hell. Understanding the concepts of heaven and hell can be quite the brain teaser. It's something people have pondered for centuries, but the origins of these ideas might surprise you. The idea of eternal bliss or torment has become central to many Christian beliefs, with over 2 billion Christians around the globe holding on to these notions. But did you know this isn't quite what Jesus originally taught? Ancient Jews, including those at the time of Jesus, didn't exactly have the same concept of heaven and hell as we do today. For them, the soul wasn't an eternal entity, but more like the breath of life. When someone died, they simply ceased to exist. There was no ongoing consciousness or afterlife. What does it say in the Hebrew Bible? It mainly talks about death as a state of nothingness. The term Sheol is used to describe the grave, not a place of punishment or reward. So the traditional Israelites didn't believe in a life after death, only in the finality of death. But things started to shift around 200 years before Jesus, with Jewish thinkers proposing that something more might await beyond death. They introduced the idea of a coming kingdom of God, a paradise on earth where all people, including those who had died, would be revived and judged. Good people would enjoy this new paradise, while the evil ones would face annihilation, not eternal torment. Jesus agreed with this resurrection idea, but added his own twist. He taught that entering this kingdom wasn't about strict law-following or ritual observance. Instead, it was about loving God and others genuinely and selflessly. So, who gets into this heavenly kingdom? Those who live by love and compassion. Now, here's the kicker. Contrary to popular belief, Jesus didn't actually preach about a fiery hell where souls suffer forever. The term hell in his teachings often referred to Gehenna, a valley near Jerusalem infamous for ancient child sacrifices. Jesus used it as a metaphor for ultimate destruction, not eternal torture. In fact, the concept of eternal hell didn't really emerge until much later. Early Christians, influenced by Greek philosophy, adopted the idea of immortal souls and therefore eternal destinies, either blissful or tormenting. This blend of Jewish and Greek thought gave rise to the more familiar notions of heaven and hell that we see today. So, what did Jesus actually teach? His focus was on the coming kingdom of God, a utopian existence on a renewed earth where those who lived with love and justice would thrive. Hell, as envisioned today, wasn't part of his original message. In essence, both Jesus and the Greek philosopher Socrates offered perspectives that can be comforting. Socrates saw death as either a peaceful sleep or a continued existence free from pain, while Jesus viewed it as an opportunity for ultimate justice and renewal. Either way, the emphasis was on how we live our lives now, caring for others and living with integrity. So while we might still be unsure about what lies beyond, one thing is clear. According to these teachings, we have nothing to fear, but much to hope for. The abduction of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is an ancient Jewish text attributed to Enoch, Noah's great-grandfather, and it's a real page-turner for those intrigued by cosmic mysteries. Why? Because it seems to closely resemble modern-day accounts of alien abductions. According to the Book of Enoch, Enoch was whisked away to the heavens by celestial beings. These descriptions are strikingly similar to what we now call alien abductions. And Enoch doesn't just mention spiritual experiences. He describes a physical realm in the skies with detailed rooms, glowing beings, and advanced technology that would blow his contemporaries' minds. Whatever Enoch saw would definitely send a Victorian child into a coma. So who are these celestial beings mentioned by Enoch? They're called the Watchers, angelic figures who came down to Earth and shared their knowledge with humans. This sounds a lot like theories suggesting that advanced extraterrestrial beings helped kickstart human civilization. But the Watchers' visit had a major plot twist. They fathered the Nephilim, a race of giants born from their unholy union with human women. Is there a connection between Enoch's abduction and modern alien encounters? Many contemporary accounts of alien abductions include stories of being taken aboard crafts, shown advanced technologies, or encountering hybrid beings. And this echoes the Nephilim saga from Enoch's time. Could it be that these ancient stories are just early versions of extraterrestrial experiences, wrapped in mythological language? Maybe. Of course, not everyone sees it this way. Some scholars argue that Enoch's descriptions are more metaphorical or symbolic, representing spiritual or philosophical ideas rather than literal alien encounters. But Enoch's surprisingly accurate astronomical knowledge, which predates modern science, adds an extra layer of mystery. Even though the Book of Enoch didn't make it into the canonical Bible, It's made a significant impact on religious and mythological studies. It's inspired a variety of interpretations and sparked debates about its role in understanding ancient civilizations and possible extraterrestrial contact. The Book of Enoch stands at a crossroads of ancient myth and modern conundrums. Its tales of heavenly beings, advanced knowledge, and the repercussions of divine intervention resonate with today's fascination with alien life. While the true nature of Enoch's experiences remains a mystery, the book continues to be a compelling lens through which we explore our cosmic curiosity and the possibility of life beyond Earth. Well, what do you think? Was Enoch abducted by aliens? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And while you're at it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.